Hi all, welcome to the lesson plan titled Getting the Lesson Started. And so you may see different topics included on the syllabus. I've kind of combined all of the topics in the syllabus into two categories. One is getting the lesson started, which includes things like instant activity, your introduction, also known as your set induction, cues, demonstrations, checking for understanding, things like that. And then the second set of lessons or topics is called developing the content, and you'll get things like the ERA of teaching. It's extension, refinement, application. You'll get teaching by invitation, intra-task variations, and then a little bit of feedback and then closure. So today we are going to talk about getting the lesson started. Okay, and as always, it's going to be a good thing that you get to pause it whenever you want, and because, for example, there's a lot of talking or a lot of words, and then if you write them all down and then click back into me, I probably won't be reading all of the words, and so you can just kind of listen to the content that goes with each of the slides and content area. So each of you, for your lessons, will start an instant activity. It depends on the age level as far as what you're going to be doing in your instant activity, and here's some guidelines for that. The instant activity is something that you do almost instantaneously. If you didn't know what instant activity is and I asked you the definition of it, you could do a pretty good job guessing it. It's literally being active as quickly as possible. For elementary school kids, it's really important to do because it really gets what's called the wiggles out, but it's also pretty important to do, I found, with my middle school students as well, because they're just like when they show up, and it gets them moving a little bit, and it really gets them kind of active and ready to listen out of the classroom mode and into your classroom, this active classroom. So there's lots of different ways to do it, and it will depend on your class structure and setup and role and all those ways on exactly what you're going to set that instant activity up like. You know, with elementary school kids, it's a little more work to get them in an instant activity, but it's a little easier, I find, if that makes any sense. And so you can say, you know, there's jump rope, spread everybody out, and everybody get near a jump rope, and they're going to do jumping rope skills, or you can press that popcorn music, that dun 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 dun, and they're jumping rope. Also, you know, there can be a wipe off board as you walk into the gym, and it'll say get a ball and a partner and begin X, Y, and Z. It can be a warm up where you press the freeze dance, again, elementary, and then the beanbag boogie is a dance in elementary school, and you press play, and that's their instant activity. So this occurs before you're actually going to do your instruction, before your introduction. It's something that they come in and they get actively moving. It's a good time for you as a teacher. It's the first time that you usually see them in a day, and sometimes if you're in a program where you don't teach PE a lot, it might be the only time that you can check in with them, so it's a perfect time to check in with them. Kind of the two questions that are always asked most frequently are, how long do I spend in my instant activity, and does it have to relate to the skill? And so those things are, they're kind of a sliding scale. Time in particular is a sliding scale. If you have an activity like jumping rope, your activity is going to be a minute max, probably. Depending on the cardiovascular strength and endurance of your students, that will, if I were to ask an adult class to do that, most people would be, half of the class would be exhausted after a minute or two. And there's really kind of after a minute, there's really no need to kind of continue that. And the other question is, if you're doing throwing and catching, does it have to be throwing and catching? No, you can bring jump ropes out and then have them do jump ropes. So you can have, if you're going to actually do throwing and catching and you want to bring scoops out, but you're not going to use scoops in your lesson, completely fine. It does not have to deal with your skill or objective for the day. So if you're doing lacrosse throwing and catching and you want to do scarf tail tag or something with scarves, juggling, it does not have to include. It just means that you have to bring out extra equipment. So usually it aligns somewhat with it, so you don't have to throw more equipment in. So we try to align what we're teaching with what we do in our instant activities, so we can get people moving, get people ready to learn, which is the goal of an instant activity, getting them ready to learn without having to bring out more equipment and add another ring to the 3-ring circus, if you will. So it's what they do instantly. You know, if you're teaching, you kind of say, hello, my name is, and the instant activity today is going to be this. And it doesn't take very long, especially in classes where you only have short 15, 20-minute lessons. You definitely don't want it to take longer than 2 or 3 minutes ever in those settings, because you only have 15 minutes. And so you don't want to use a ton of your time, your educational time, in your instant activity. The next thing right after your instant activity is I call your introduction. You can call it your set induction as well. Dr. George Graham, who's the author of Children Moving, and kind of renowned as the person who's the godfather, if you will, of appropriate PE. If he's the godfather, Dr. Judy Rink is the godmother for the kind of the two leaders in the field. They use the terms introduction and set induction, each of them. And so really an introduction is what becomes the beginning of the lesson. And the next several slides are going to talk about what it is that you're going to be, what a good introduction looks like, and what you'll be expected to do as well. So an introduction is kind of this is what you're going to learn today. And depending on your age level, that will change a little bit. You know, when you're teaching little kids, you can be like, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and you're not going to believe what we're going to do. And you'll talk about stories and really kind of hooks that get people interested in your lesson in a different way than if, you know, you have a high school kids. So if you have little kids and you want them to work on flow, and you're going to talk about being a ballerina, that's probably not going to work with, you know, big kids as well. You'll have to have something different, more applicable, more about, you know, how it's going to affect them and how they can be better performers. And you got to think about the age level and the content that's going to be that's going to really hook them. So it's going to provoke interest, and you're going to always introduce your why. So today we are going to do this, and this is why. And it's really important. I also always have students include their objective. My objective for you today is, and you've just spent an awesome amount of time building excellent learning objectives. So you can say, my objective for you today is, I want to see that big target over there. I want you to hit it 7 out of 10 times. And I'm going to give you some specific hints on how you're going to do that, and some really great challenges. So you can, whatever you're going to set up that lesson. So, you know, if you have older kids, you're going to talk about a challenge that you're going to give them, and maybe point out the challenge, so they can be like, okay, you know, maybe there's a little bit more buy-in in there. That's always what you want to do with older kids, is increase that buy-in. It goes near the beginning of the lesson, of course, because it's after instant activity. And if you have a block schedule, and your lesson plan is 1 hour and 40 minutes, then your instant activity can be 15 minutes. If you have a 20-minute or 30-minute lesson, your instant activity cannot be 15 minutes. It just can't. It's too much content. 50% of your content time cannot be juggling when you're not teaching juggling. So near the beginning of the lesson is it's just usually right after instant activity. No matter what grade level you're teaching, no matter where in the content, if it's the first lesson or the 10th lesson, you want to be as brief as possible. And that will be a challenge in peer teaching lessons, as I've learned the last couple times that we've done virtual teaching, is you get the opportunity to practice being brief. So one idea at a time, the briefest explanation that you can possibly put together, so that you can say go faster. The faster you can say go, the quicker they're involved, the quicker they begin the actual learning. In your introduction, part of the things that you're going to be including is those reminder words or phrases. And we'll talk about cues here in a second. But we take a skill and we break it down into tiny learnable pieces, so that people, when they're learning, can focus on those tiny pieces while they're performing their movement. So instruction is brief, one idea at a time. It includes the learning cues, or your reminder words or phrases. And your job through this brief instruction is to verbally guide your participants through these complex instructions, the complex activities. So that's really what this brief instruction piece looks like. The next piece, and it's got with it because it's extremely important. I always say that I could hire someone based on their ability to, number one, describe to me how they use cues, and number two, how they select cues or what cues they use. I think it is the key to student learning, coupled with feedback. I think it's the key to student learning. Your ability to select appropriate, meaningful cues will determine your ability to teach people to be skillful or not, period. I think it's one of the most telling things, and I literally do think I could hire and fire people. I don't get that opportunity though, but to hire people based on their ability to do this well. So hopefully you've written this down so I don't have to go slow, but really cues are just the words or phrases that give critical information to learners. That's critical. I mean, the word is in there, but it's critical that you select cues that give people the information that you want them to focus on when they're participating. They always focus on the quality of movement. So if your elbow's in or your elbow's up or your sides to target, that's the quality of the movement that you want to see, and you're going to ask your students to focus on it. There's a couple things in here that you'll write them down and you go, yeah, of course they have to be accurate, and of course they need to be in a logical progression, but a good percent of the time, probably 30% of the cues I'll grade in a lesson plan will violate the either accuracy or the logical progression piece. So the accuracy piece is kind of most difficult when you don't know the skill, because it's hard. It is difficult to do something that you don't know. If I teach you how to throw highlight, you might guess, you shouldn't guess, but you might research, and then hopefully you research and find a place that's reliable. But a lot of times people will throw together some crazy stuff that doesn't make sense. For example, if you're teaching throwing, and I've actually recently seen this, so it's a perfect example that kind of pops in my head, where I saw someone say, okay, elbow up, which is right, you want your elbow up when you're throwing, you don't want it to be kind of your elbow down here. So your elbow's up, and when you follow through, you're gonna follow through across your body into the opposite pocket. I've seen people actually have this alternate hand out in front of them, and when they follow through, they're gonna clap this hand, and I get the gist of the fact that you want them to come forward, but that is not an accurate cue. That will not get them to throw accurately, and never do you want them to do that. But you do want them to kind of come through to the opposite pocket, side to the target, those types of things. So they have to be accurate. Logical progression, there is a progression that the performance of a skill occurs in, and they usually call it the before, during, and after. So the setup of it all, before contact is made or before release of the ball or whatever it is, that point where contact is made, and then the follow through aspects. So the best way, and if you use that Steps to Success Human Kinetics book series, it actually divides those for you. It'll give you like 10 cues in the preparation, 10 cues in the contact phase, and then 10 cues in the follow-through phase, or what they call it different depending on the skill. So you pick one cue from here, one cue from here, and one cue from here, and you've got your 3, boom, ready to go. They're in a logical order. It makes no sense to put them in random other orders, because these are the orders that you want your students to remember them as they're performing them. But a lot of people will do that in an illogical fashion. Age and ability appropriate. You've got to make sure that your cues are understandable for your crowd, if you will. So saying step with the opposite foot for kindergartners will make no sense whatsoever. Any big vocabulary, transition, side orientation, if you can't use that, depending on your clientele, for example, you can't use it with little kids. And there are other ways, and a perfect example of that is, say that you are going to teach throwing with kindergartners. You can always talk about the hand that they write with. And real small kids, what I do is when they walk in, I ask them to raise the hand they write with, and I'll put a sticker on their opposite foot. And so my cue for the day is going to be step with your sticker foot. And then stickers always fall off, but if you can get them to stay on, it's a genius idea. Step with the sticker foot, arm way up, whatever it is. So age and ability appropriate. You can't use sticker foot with seniors in high school. So those are the types of things that we need to pay attention to. No more. Almost ever, no more than 3 cues in any one activity, especially if they're beginners, and especially if they're longer, because you are learning something. It is difficult to remember a lot of things during learning. So if it's easy little words, for example, in swimming, there's something when you're doing breaststroke, you use 4 words there. They're individual words, and they're there to establish a cadence. And it goes pull, breathe, pause, kick, glide, pull, breathe, kick, glide, pull, breathe, kick, glide. You get it. Those are 4 words. That's for the cadence. Other than that, there's very few examples where you should have 4 cues. They can't remember that many, they can't focus on that many, and they cannot learn that many. Research has showed it time and time again. So no more than 3 cues. If they're longer cues, if they're more sentences or phrases, then you need to have maybe 1 or 2. So it's too difficult to do this cognitive engagement while you're doing this motoric engagement and expecting learning in both. So make sure you make some good decisions about what that is that you're going to do. So if you're, usually the question is, so that can I have one cue? Absolutely. To use a swimming example again, and I teach kinesiology majors how to swim, and a lot of times the struggle is the head alignment with the body, so they'll swim with their head up. And I will do activity after activity after activity where the only thing I want them to focus on is getting their chin down in the water. And I'll be like, the water line is here, chin in the water. That's the only thing I'm focused on because it's so hard. And so if you are focusing on that, as well as, something with your legs and something with your arms, then something's got to give. You're not going to remember all of those things. So it kind of just depends on the activity, but sometimes you do only have one cue. You'll notice that a lot of this next one is in alignment with the cognitive objectives that we're talking, or cognitive domains that we're talking about. So this is certainly that piece. Skill cues play right into what you want them to learn about the skill. So for beginning learners, if you're picking out skills for them and they're very young or they're beginning, so beginning learners can be high school students, they can be college students, they can be anybody who's just starting. If I just put a racket in your hand for the first time, you are a beginning learner. You are going to need beginning cues, rack it up, side to target. You're not going to use advanced cues yet. You're not ready for them. So general descriptors of the position or the skill as a whole, a single cue at a time, things that are easy to remember and have very little analysis. So you're not analyzing why your side needs to be the target, why your weight is on the back foot. You're not analyzing that as a beginner. And that makes sense. Once you've kind of crossed that threshold with the majority of your students and they are no longer beginners as far as the initial easy cues, you can start to talk about process or why. They can handle more process oriented. Why do we put the weight back? When we're throwing, why do we step with the opposite foot? So you can actually have activities where you go out and you have them throw stepping with the same foot, and you see, are you as accurate? Can you throw it as far? Are you as strong? Are you, those are the types of things that you can actually pause. Hold on. Great, my camera's doing that thing again. Let's see. There we go. Jeez. Sorry, Amazon Prime delivery. So I think I was talking about the ability to process things. And so if you're talking about, I think I was talking about an example where you are having students throw stepping with the same foot to see if they are more accurate or less accurate, stronger, able to produce more force, those types of things, or the conversations that you can have when they are ready for the why. And so more advanced learners are ready for the why. And why, W-H-Y, is the best question to ask. So if you're going to say, who can tell me one of the cues? And they say step with the opposite foot. And you can say, well, why do you think we step with the opposite foot? And ask some really good questions about the process of it, about understanding what, there it is, about understanding, period. So the why question is really critical, super easy to ask, and it can be asked after almost every question that you ask in closure. Why did we do that today? Who can tell me one of the things that we did today and why? So asking them to go, I don't know why we did that. Let's process it. Works amazingly well. And then lastly, any kind of, if it's a longer sentence or a longer phrase, they're definitely the only place that really belongs is for advanced learners. So if your cue is actually a process-oriented, longer cue about force production, about follow through to the target for accuracy, that's definitely something you want to kind of scale back the number of cues you have to one, maybe two. So we're talking about things that go in the introduction as we look at all these different types of things, kind of that getting the lesson started piece. So there's brief instruction, that's where your skill cues belong. And we're also going to put our demonstrations there. There it is. So demonstrations have a lot of pieces to them. Really good quality demonstrations have really great pieces to them, if you will. So after you've written this down, it'll make more sense after my explanation. So certainly write in notes after the first two pieces. So those first two pieces are whole, part, whole, and normal, slow, normal. They go together, and I'll take them piece by piece to kind of explain them, and then you can kind of holistically figure out what the heck that means. But when you talk about whole, part, whole in a demonstration, it's talking about the whole skill. So you are going to be required to do this in your great lesson for classes in the real world if you want really good learning. And what whole, part, whole means is that you're going to show the whole skill. So if you're going to work on throwing, you're going to get a ball in your hand, you're going to have a person that's going to catch it or a target that's in front of you, and you're actually going to show the whole skill at normal speed, which is the next piece. The whole thing, throw, step, let go of the ball, let it go towards the target. Then you're going to show the part of it. If you're going to focus on stepping with the opposite foot and getting your elbow up, that's the part that you are going to show in slow motion. So see how the normal and whole go together, and then the part and slow go together. So slow down the whole skill and show, here's what I mean by step with the opposite foot. I don't mean this foot, I mean this foot. And then when I say, I forgot what the cue was, but get elbow up, I mean up here by the elbow. So if you, as your students are sitting down, you're showing them the elbow is coming up to the level of the ear, or triceps on a shelf. If you've got older kids, that's a different age level cue. So you're going to show them that here's my whole skill at normal level, you're going to throw it. And then here's the part, step with the opposite foot, and here's slow motion. And then at the very end, show the whole skill at normal speed again. So whole skill, show it at normal speed, let go of the ball, throw it at the target. Slow speed, this is what we're going to look at, pointing out those cues, and then normal speed again so they can see it again. That is a perfect descriptive demonstration that will get kids to go, okay, that's what it looks like, this is what I'm focusing on, and that's what it looks like one more time before I go out. That can and does include, that was just an example of a skill demonstration. If you are doing an activity demonstration, and you will move to that every day, hopefully in your lessons, you're going to have skill practice, and then, excuse me, you'll move to an activity. You're going to do the same thing. You have to show the whole skill. The whole activity. You have to show the whole activity and all of its moving parts. So if you have 4 people in an activity, bring up 3 people with you, or 4 people, put them in that activity, show them the whole thing at whole speed, let it be successful. And then show them, focus them on, the part here would be the cue. You're always focusing on quality. So if you're at the point where you're in a game stage 4 activity and they're moving parts to this, they're in a modified game, we don't do anything without focusing on skill. So even in game stage 4 modified games, you're still focusing on cues. So you can point, oh, here's where that is, and this is what it looks like. And if you're the demonstrator, you can slow it down more easily to say, this is what a pick and roll is in slow motion, and then do it in normal speed again. During demonstrations, the third bullet here, and super important, during demonstrations, you are verbally focusing them on the key aspects. So you are focusing them on cues. There's a bird behind me that wants to talk a lot. You're verbally focusing on whatever it is during the demonstration. Notice how this person does their elbow up. Notice how this person is positioning when they scream. Whatever that is, during the demonstration, you are always focusing on quality. Always focusing on quality. You can never go wrong if you focus on quality throughout the lesson. You should include examples or non-examples. So a couple examples I've given today is that if you're going to pass down the midline of the body, this is the midline. If you're volleyball passing and you have to reach here, that's the desired way. Stepping, if you're going to step, throw with the, just step with the opposite foot, you show example. Obviously you can't see me, or non-example, and actually show a non-example. And you should include that. So if you work with throwing and catching, you know the things that they're going to do wrong the most frequently, perform things wrong. And so you can say, this is what I want your elbow up here. This is when you throw, your elbow comes across here, not down here, it's up here by your ear. So show examples of what you want and examples of what you don't want. And of course, they can always include you, they can include your participants, a combination. And it really kind of depends on your skill level and your student's skill level on what exactly you're going to do. The last thing, and I don't know why it's here, but there is one, I'm going to include it anyways because I don't want you to forget it, but when I load this lecture onto Canvas, it will be there. The last thing that goes in your introduction is checking for understanding. So that probably means that it's in the developing the content, because checking for understanding occurs throughout the lesson. but you will be required at least one time in your lesson to check for understanding. And what the overhead will say is something along the lines of, it's your quick check of students' comprehension. So you're going to do some strategy in your introduction usually that is going to check to see if students understand what's expected of them. So things, and it takes less than 30 seconds, usually 10 seconds. It's a super quick check for understanding. So everybody stand up and show me what flat platform looks like. Show me what your flat platform looks like. Show me what passing down the midline of your body is going to look like. So everybody stands up and passes down and makes contact down the midline. Show me how many times you are going to perform throw at the target before you move to the next station. And everybody shows you whatever the number is, 5, 10. That is checking for understanding. What will also appear on that overhead will be non-examples of that. You cannot ask these 3 things to count as checking for understanding. One is you cannot ask, do you understand? So, right, do you understand? Cross it out. You cannot ask, are there any questions? And expect that to count for checking for understanding, because it does not mean that. If you say, are there any questions? And nobody raises their hand, that does not mean that they don't have any questions. It just means they won't raise their hand at that point. And then the last one, it's a little bit of pet peeve for me, but in the real, virtual learning is a little bit different. If I say, can you see the slide demonstrations? Give me a thumbs up, and one person does, then I know that everybody can. That is not the same in the real world. If you say thumbs up if you understand, that does not check for comprehension or understanding. That checks for one person's ability to go like this. And usually when you say, does everybody understand, the very next thing is activity. And if you say thumbs up for if you understand enough in your world, in your lessons, in your classes, people will know that if you get 1 thumbs up, it is time to play, and that's what they want to do. So the 3 things that you cannot do for checking for understanding is say, do you understand? Are there any questions? Or thumbs up if you understand. That does not count for checking for understanding. Doesn't mean that you can't do them. Probably means that you shouldn't do them as frequently as you can. Check for real understanding. Who can tell me where we're going next? Everybody point to where we're going to start. Everybody show me what it sounds like to land softly like when you jump. Land softly like a kitty cat. Let's show me what it means to land softly. Show me ready position. Those types of things are true checking for comprehension, and that will typically occur in the introduction somewhere, but definitely occur throughout your lesson. If you're a great instructor, you will check for understanding, and you'll be really good at that, and it will occur at several places in your lesson. So there will undoubtedly be points for you, your ability to check for understanding and do it well. So that's the end of the getting the lesson started. There is the developing the content lesson that follows, and it'll go right after your introduction with all the pieces that we just talked about.